point. So, but let me talk about the PSAT first. For some of you, it might not be useful if your kids are already out of that, but I thought I'd just talk about it as an intro. So the PSAT, is a test that most school kids get when they're juniors. Some schools do it when they're sophomores as well. It's like a mini SAT. It's not mini, but it's
Is
small.
everybody able to hear? I can't hear you anymore.
Oh no! Can the rest of you hear me? They can hear me. I think it might be on your end.
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Tammy, was that you that couldn't hear me?
Yes, that was me, and now I can.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm talking about the PSAT. The PSAT, like I say, is like a mini SAT. It has reading and grammar and math. It's formatted the same way. It's just a little shorter. The numbers that you see when your kids bring it home are real. They're not like, they won't go to colleges, but they are the real thing. Like as far as, getting a basis for what your child's score is, it's accurate. Now, what happens is though, if it doesn't look like your old scores you remember from school, just add a 0 to it. Like if you see if the total is 120, then it's 1200. You put a 0 on it. If they get a 60, and then it's a 600. So it's about right. Can you expect your kids' scores to go up over time? A little bit between sophomore and junior year. Sometimes parents, I've noticed they expect a ton of improvement. Don't expect a ton. Generally speaking, unless you prepare and go after this thing, you'll go up a little bit, but not a ton. And there's some variation anyway. So don't expect just because they took geometry algebra 2 that year that it's gonna just shoot up. It's still a reasoning test mostly. It's not a knowledge-based test anyway. So unless you attack it that way, you're not going to make a gigantic improvement in it. So those are the numbers mean. Are they important for college apps? No, not really. The numbers themselves aren't. However, if your child is in the top 3 or 4%, it can mean they can be commended by national merit people, or they can get a semifinalist or finalist designation, and that's kind of cool. You can put it on your college app. It's nice. You might get some money for it, not a ton, not the kind of money you would get for merit aid. That's a whole different ball game, from the college based on your kids' thing. So in general, the PSAT is not something to worry about. If you're a real high flying kid and you think, boy, you have a shot at it, then you might want to study for it. Otherwise, though, parents don't go too crazy about it. It's just a thing, and you might not even know what the kid's score is, your child's score is, and until they get it junior year, and you go, oh, that's a surprise. Yes, happy, or it's about what I thought, or whatever. Generally speaking, I would say parents, and maybe just because they're the parents that contact me because they're looking for help, they feel sometimes a little disappointed, and students do too, because they feel like, geez, I'm a great student. Why is my test score? I mean, that's probably half of my students, right? Why is my test score not the same? Well, the test score is not the same as grades. It's just not. There's some correlation, but not a ton. In school, grades can come from any number of things. They can come from being really smart. They can come from the class being really easy. They can come through extra credit. They can come from, talking to a teacher to let you get your assignment in late. There's a lot of things. Also, folks, as you may be aware, there's grade inflation. It's a thing. It happens over time. And generally speaking, this will sound real cynical, but a teacher is going to get in less hot water by giving high grades than low grades. Do you know what I mean? So if they're gonna if they're gonna be a little not cool one way or the other, it's more likely to go that way. So that doesn't mean that a lot of your kids' grades aren't real, but you never know. But the test doesn't play that. The test just monitors the number of bubbles they fill in, right and wrong. They don't know if your child is the nicest person in the world. They don't know if he belongs to National Honor Society. It doesn't. It's just the test just measures how many bubbles you fill in right. You know what I mean? Now it's true. It's not by luck you're going to get a certain score. I mean, it's going to be fair, but it measures things that school doesn't always measure. It measures, reasoning ability. It measures reading ability a lot. Reading ability is a common throughout all the sections of the SAT and ACT, even math. And I think that, I don't know if it's a shock to kids, but I don't think they realize how much they're giving away by not reading questions and answers very carefully. It's a big deal. They tend to want to race ahead to answer choices when really they need to read the questions more carefully. And if you're a good reader, that's really helpful. Most of my students are not, by their own admission. They'll just say it, and really good students, what I mean? Like, type A, kids that are, shooting for the highest school, they just don't like to read that much. I can't really make them be readers, but if there's one thing I would say to kids, if you want to prepare in general, reading is the best. It's not the what they want to hear, but if you read what you like, you can read. I mean, novels are great, obviously, but the New York Times or the Economist, it can be liberal, conservative, whatever, just something that's well written. Wall Street Journal, and it's something that they're interested in. Movie reviews, if they're well written, not just somebody blogging. Getting comfortable with that is important because you think about it, then all of a sudden they're faced with this test with something they don't like to do, every day, and it could be an issue. They read all the time. Now, shoot, they read their phones, constantly, but that's not the same thing, as you know. And real writers can't put emojis in to explain, hey, I was just being sarcastic. So yeah, reading is very beneficial. I personally don't find it painful. I like it, but I can't argue with the way the world is. So I'm just saying that is a helpful thing. However, if you're an analytical person, you can pick up a lot of points by structuring your approach to the test, even if you don't love to read. So the kids that beat my score generally tend to be expert math students who adapt a system and reading and work it, and they work hard at it and they master the system. They don't become great literature teachers. They just become, they understand how the test works. So if you missed the PSAT, oh, and by the way, to become a National Merit Finalist depends on which state you're in. Here in Pennsylvania, it's going to be roughly around 217. And what that means is they take the math score, which could be like 60, and they put it together with 2 English scores, which could be like 55 and 55. So there'd be 55 plus 55 plus 60. That would come out to what, 1700 or 170. But the cutoff is like 217. It's pretty high. And it's higher, the harder the school, the state you go, you live in, the higher it is. So again, I wouldn't, sweat too much about it. It's not as important as the SATs themselves. If you missed a PSAT, and that can happen nowadays, because let's say your school didn't have it in the fall, and then they rescheduled it for January, which some schools did, and then they got hit with weather, which happened here to some kids. You can petition the SAT people to use an SAT score as a replacement for that PSAT score. Again, though, I wouldn't worry unless you're at the very, very top, because it won't matter. I mean, taking the SAT alone may practice, but you can. Do I know the procedure? I don't. It's a relatively new thing. So I would talk to your counselor and the SAT people, and they should have, because if it happened at your school, then there's a lot of kids in the same position, and the counselor should have some kind of handle on that. That's called alternate entry. So that's my 2 cents about the PSAT. Before I go on the SAT, does anybody have any questions? Okay. Yeah, and also you can't take the PSAT on a separate date. You can't sign up for it online. It's ministered through the schools usually, just to let you know. Okay, so the SAT. Now, parents, it is different than you remember. I believe now I got all you beat. I'm older than all of you, but I'm going to guess by a fair amount. When I started out, the parents were older than I am now. It's rough. But the way it works is it is now an 800 system that we remember, or that I remember, and you probably remember. For a while, from like 2004 to like about 5 years ago, it was a three-pronged system, 800. There was English reading, there was grammar, and there was math. So it was a 2,400 point test. It's back to being 800. What they have is they have reading, which you would recognize mostly, even though they took out a lot of vocab heavy things like sentence completions and analogies. They say they're trying to be nice or not be such kind of eggheady with their vocab. They still find a way to test it though. And then they have something that you wouldn't recognize, and that's grammar. And this is interesting to me because to me, one of the things I learned right away, and I realized when I started teaching SATs, is that even though I was an English major and I went to a fancy school and I write, I didn't know some of the grammar rules. I didn't really learn them in school, and then I found out that my kids didn't either, and that pretty much it's almost never taught. You ask your kids, you won't hear much about it. They learn more grammar in Spanish or French class than they do in English usually. So it's kind of weird. So the SAT people, they added the SAT to writing test that used to be separate, and they added it to the SAT, like I say, for 10 years. And the colleges that went, nah, they weren't really that crazy about it. A lot of them didn't even consider it. I thought it might have an impact on high schools, what they taught. It did not, which stunk. So anyway, they moved back to the 1,600 point test. However, in that old 2,400 point test, the 800 test was sometimes just thrown out by colleges. They didn't look at it. Now, the grammar, there is a grammar section, and it cannot be taken out. So now really, on both the ACT and the grammar, and ACT and the SAT, the grammar section is part of the test, and it cannot be removed. And so I would hope that that would stir people to teach more grammar, but as far as I can see, they're not. That's sad to me. On the one hand, they're not going crazy hard grammar. It's mostly basic stuff, but it is stuff that you should look at because, or you or your child, because they test a few things over and over and over on it. Syntax, they love sentence structure and conjunctive adverbs like however and nevertheless. Geez, they love that kind of thing. They love testing punctuation and more than they probably should, but that's what they really hammer home. Um, but at the same time, the grammar section, they put content questions where they actually ask them about kind of what's going on and how they write a sentence. So that can be a bit of a shock if a kid just thinking like I'm looking for subject verb agreement or something. So in any case, whether you do something with a tested person or you go to Khan Academy and you do it on your own, the one thing for sure is you or your child should really get a little bit familiar with this test before you do it. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not something that you're going to see in school. It doesn't look like schoolwork. Schoolwork is in English. You might read the Great Gatsby. You might write some papers. You will write much grammar. In math, this year be doing geometry, and this year, but you're not going to get a test that looks like this test, so multiple choice questions and that jumps all over the place in math. And really is more of a reasoning test, not more of a. When I say reasoning, I mean what they do with the math is it's mostly middle school math. It's Algebra 1, geometry, uh, arithmetic, but they kind of trick it out. They word it not funny, but they make it, they kind of make you think about it. And it's not as much formulas. Do you know what I mean? And I would say a lot of times when kids go to the test, they're always looking for a formula to write in. And sometimes there is no formula. Sometimes, you got to draw it out with your pencil and that stumps them. Like kids are like most people, me too. I'm an artsy guy, but I like to know how to do something. And they like to know, how do I do this? And some problems don't say that. They don't announce themselves to the students as, there's a way to do it. There are several ways to do it if you practice. Also on the test, the fact that there are answer choices there is very different than school, and it can be really an issue for kids. On reading and grammar, what I find is that students like to run ahead to the answer choices and sort through them and really ponder them without really understanding the question. I think I said that before, but it bears repeating. Boy, they really do that. They will be looking all over A, B, C, and D when they're really not looking for the same thing. It's like they should be looking for gold, but they're looking for a coal. I mean, it's like it's a problem. On the math, though, the multiple choice questions actually are part of the game, and they don't probably mess a kid up, in my opinion. Sometimes that's part of the reasoning deal is that they go in there and they might go, you know what, it's got to be C. It has to be C, and that's part of the test. You're allowed to do that. It's like a little video game cheat. You're allowed to jump ahead if you saw that. So in a way, it's fun. I mean, when I was in high school, I was not a math person. I gradually told myself I wasn't. Parents, you may know what I'm talking about. I didn't want to do it. I was okay at it, but I was an English guy, and that's what I do because I'm American, and Americans, in my opinion, we're good. We say we're good at one thing, and that's it. We're just, it's a way of defending ourselves, I think. Some of my students who are not from this country don't play that game, and their parents don't. They're very much, you'll learn it, and that's a better approach in general. It's more useful. But American kids often say, I'm just not good at this. Well, maybe, but maybe you just need to get over the hump on this, because when I had to start teaching this stuff, when I started teaching in California, I'm from here, but when I started doing this job in California, I was just hired to teach English and grammar. And so it even more kind of confirmed my idea that I'm not a math person, right? And then when I came back, I learned to teach it. And first it was, but once I got past that hump, now I like it. I'm not as good at math as I'm at critical reading and grammar, but I'm a 700. That my score went up a lot because I stopped fearing it, and then I started approaching it smartly. For instance, one way to approach a test smartly in this is not to try to do every single question. A lot of kids see that they want to do them all. That's not a good idea. They're not going to get them all right. And for instance, if they see a math problem that they don't know how to do, leave it alone. You can fill it in at the end. I'll talk about that as a strategy, but it doesn't even if they get it right, if they spend 3 minutes on it, they lose the battle and they win the battle and lose the war. You really want, so if you're worried about your kids, oh, they didn't get to this question, they didn't get to this question, that's not the key to this for the most part, unless you're really, really high in math. The key to this is like, hey, nailing down those things that they do know, and then getting some practice with them and learning how to solve problems that might not be worded the same way you're used to, but they don't involve any extra crazy math. Okay. So if your kids are telling you like this math is too hard in the SAT, it's not really. There's no more knowledge to intrigue. At the same time, I've had kids in calc tell me, oh, I don't remember this math. I don't know, boy. Some of the math is you kind of have to use it if you're in calculus. You have to use algebra to do it. So anyway, so yeah, but like anything else, you can definitely work at it and get better. There's no doubt about that. I guarantee you. If you work at it, you will get. If you work at it steadily, you will get better at it. And what I try to tell the kids is, actually, with the things in life, this is one of the easier things. Not that it's easy, but you won't get like a book that tells you how to be married or have kids. Well, I guess you may have that one, what to do when you're expecting, but you have it's actually there. Everything that is going to be the test you can study for, which so in relative terms, compared to all of high school and all the classes and all the extracurriculars and hormones and all that stuff, it's one of the easier things to deal with if you think about it that way. But somehow kids will tend to say, maybe your kids feel like, I don't want to spend time on this, it's just I'll do a little bit, whatever. Yeah, but given the percentage of your college app, and we'll talk about test optional in a second, like it's a quarter of it. Think about that. It's an appreciable portion. And so I don't see why you shouldn't spend some time on it as opposed to all the other things. So my means of my saying you should spend as much time on it as schoolwork, for crying out loud. But it's not worth like just blowing off or saying you'll just do it when you do it. I think it's worth putting in the effort. Now, that will bring me to, that's the way the SAT works for the most part. You fill in bubbles and you get a score. Should you take the test? That's probably the main question parents have right now. Test optional. You've all heard this, right? This year, for the class of 21, pretty much every college is test optional. Because of what happened last year and how difficult it was for kids to take tests, I know my kids worked and they couldn't find test centers. It was rough, they thought it was unfair, and I totally agree with them. So you do not have to, for this class, do not have to have taken the SAT or ACT. You can be optional. What that results in, it sounds good, but that means it's the same for everybody, which means that everybody's operating by the same rules. And so let's say your child has really great grades. Well, a lot of their kids have really great grades, and also it encourages more people to apply, probably, that thought maybe, hey, I couldn't cut it at the school, the one school I want to go to by scores, so by grades I'm okay. And if you probably have seen, kids will often talk themselves, or parents too, like into thinking, I think I can apply that. I mean, you can apply, but schools have been deluged by applications, and it's not likely if you're pretty far off, because you need something to draw their attention. It's pretty rough. I'm just saying, just college apps are rough. That's why with all this business, I'm just talking about the SATs. It's just part of it. But in general, with your kids, do your best, and then you can control it. You do the best you can. And then if you're a productive person, an efficient person, and you work on the SAT like anything else, you'll probably be okay as an adult, wherever you go to college. Maybe that's not what you want to hear. I know I didn't want to hear that, but it's kind of true. You have to trust a little bit. But meanwhile, going back to my job and the SATs, in the future, what will happen? Well, I think definitely next year, there'll be some schools, more elite schools, will go back to requiring the SAT or the ACT. And as time goes on, probably a few more will do it. However, those schools that are test optional, many of them were already test optional anyway. They're going to elect to stay that way. Plus, there's also a social movement against the tests because it's unfair. I don't 100% agree with that, but I see where they're coming from. It discriminates against some people. I get that. On the other hand, the reason the test is useful for colleges is that, if they're comparing kids from Parkland to Southern Lehigh to Central Bucks South, and they all are great kids, and they all have, how do they compare apples to oranges? Well, the score. The score is one thing that they all did, and it's one objective criteria. It's not perfect, but it is one. And so it can kind of validate the kids. I don't know if kid doesn't, but by saying kid, I say kids a lot. It doesn't proclaim them geniuses, but it can validate the grades. It can show, yeah, this kid's pretty sharp. There are some kids who have not so great grades and are great at tests. Do colleges pay attention? Yeah, because that might mean they got a diamond in the rough. Maybe this kid has been bored in high school. My grades in high school were okay. They were good. But my test scores are better, and I got into Columbia. I got into a fancy college. I wouldn't have gotten in now. It's just too competitive, right? But my grades are better in college than in high school. Being more challenged, I bloomed. I enjoyed that. I wasn't bored. So, testing can reveal that to colleges sometimes. And like I say, it's a reasoning test, it's a reading test, and it measures a kid's ability to, to move forward, to be systematic, to manage their time. Those are college skills. Those are life skills. So it's not 100%, but there's definitely a correlation. I mean, like if you're saying like, does it completely correlate to success? No, but if you have a really high testing kid, that goes to an average school, he can probably walk or his way through, you know. And if you have a very low scoring kid who go to elite school, then the kid might struggle, on the other hand, by the way, elite schools are not all they're cracked up to be, having done it myself. I've seen people kind of walk their way through it too. And also recently, because it's so hard to get in, my students have gotten to the Ivies have been athletes whose scores are hundreds of points less than you would normally think. So athletics do work, but I myself question, I don't know. Our team sucked at Columbia. Sorry, but why would what's the point? I don't get it. It's the end of the road. As an athlete, if you want to play, great, but why would you take away a spot from somebody else anyway? So that's the way the SAT works in general. It's a 1,600 point test. There's 800 points each. There's grammar for half the critical reading, and there's reading. On the math side, like I said, they test middle school math mostly, a little bit of senior high math. An interesting thing is that they have a thing called the grid-in section, which I think you might remember. You write in your answer sometimes. Have you ever heard of that? You like it's A, B, C, D for most of it, but then you hit a section where it's like you write them all in. You write in 1/3, or you write in 2, 4, 9, 1, and you fill in the bubbles. Okay. Here's a little tip if you can remember it. This is what I do. Since those grid-ins come at the end of each math section, what I do is I have my kids go there first, because you can't guess them quick at the end. Do you know what I mean? You can't just like run through them. So I like my kids to do those, make sure that there's no safety net with A, B, C, and D. You have to know the answer and bubble it in. So I like them to look at those first, even if they don't do them all, then go back to multiple choice. Because at the end of the time, and you should tell your students, your children this for sure, you should fill in every bubble. You may remember when you were taking the test, somebody might have told you that there's a penalty for taking the bubble. There is no longer a penalty. That's the thing right there. If you're telling your kid, don't feel too bad, but it no longer is true. There used to be a 1/4 point penalty for filling in a bubble wrong. Over time, if you filled in bubbles at random, or you didn't guess at all, it came out as a wash. It was the same statistically over time. So yeah, so it didn't matter. Now though, since there's no penalty, you'll get 1 out of 4 right, and that matters. So definitely at the end of the test, when you get some time, make sure all those bubbles get filled in. Okay, you'll grab extra points, and it matters. There's not a zillion questions. There's a fair amount, but not a zillion. And what I do for my kids is this. I say, when you got those 2 minutes left, see which bubble you've done the least this section, whether it's A, B, C, or D. Take that bubble and do that one for the end. Just do that one till the end, B. For instance, let's say you have like 8 Bs and 9 Ds and 12 As and 11, I'll go with the one I did the least. My chance will be a little bit. Now, it's true that will depend a little bit on how well I did to begin with, but it's as good a guess as any. And if you did well, you probably have more than a 1 in 4 guess. You might have a 1 in 3. Now, are all the bubbles exactly the same, or are they all the same equal? No, but they're roughly equal. Roughly. You know what I mean? So it's just, and also it takes the thought process out rather than going like this. I've seen kids bubble randomly and they think about it. There's no point thinking about it. Just fill in the freaking bubble. I mean, before the time runs out. Which brings me to another thing students should do on the test: measure their time. Please bring a watch. I do that. I bring a watch and I monitor my time. I want to know my time. Now, they do tell you how much time is in the room, but sometimes, you know what? Clock doesn't work. Sometimes the clock's behind you. You can't have an Apple Watch. It has to be like a regular old person watch. But I like to know how much time I have. I like to measure not just how much time I have at the end, but how much time I'm spending on a certain amount of questions. If for instance, there's 5 passages, let's say, in 65 minutes on the reading section, well, that comes out to 13 minutes per passage. I know I can get to them all. So I'm going to measure, make sure I get them in 13 minutes. Now, not all kids are going to get to them all, and they shouldn't. If they're not great at it, they should be better off. They'd be better off doing 4.5 passages really well and guessing randomly, right? You know what I'm saying? That's better than rushing. In fact, if you look at your kid's PSAT score, you might take a look sometimes and you see like the thing fall off at the end. That's where all the guessing started. That's now if it's just guessing that they didn't spend time on, fine. But if it's where they spend a little bit of time, like spending a little bit of time is as bad as guessing. Do you know what I mean? That's why I say either do the problem or question or don't. You know what I mean? Don't halfway it. You know, think, well, I've got just a few minutes. I can do 10 questions. No, you can't. You can do maybe 3, and then you should randomize the rest. It's a game. Okay. It's a game. It's just like Monopoly or chess. It has different rules. And now parents, you know that there's no penalty. Now you'll tell your kid, guess, you know? So is that the gigantic score difference? No, but it's a difference. And again, you know, like you're playing the game, if your child is in charge of the test, her own test, then she will feel better and be more productive. You know, it's your test though, not the kid next to you. Like if you're next to your friend who's a phenomenal 1600 point, you know, don't look over to that kid. That's another thing. Students, if you're listening to me, don't watch those other kids. Sometimes they finish early and go like this. Yeah. They are not doing good. That's not good. Almost, I guarantee you, the kid that does that is not doing it right. I've seen kids beat me on reading by like 15 minutes. I don't think so. You know, I don't think so. So no, they should always work up into the end of the time. You know, and if you see some kids, but now it's true, some kids can get through it a little bit early. But on math, for instance, why? Just keep working. Do something. Check your work. Anything. There's no, you know what I mean? Use that time. Anyway, I'm babbling and babbling. Before I go on, let me pause and take a breath and ask you folks if you have any questions. Yes, Maria.
How long is the SAT? The whole?
Well, it's how long it takes to actually test and how long you're in the room is different. It takes 65 minutes from the first section, 35 in the second, 25 in the third, and 55 in the fourth. However, when you take it all out and all the time, it takes 5 hours, because with all the time it takes to get in there, sit down, and the kids all know it's like once you're sitting there, you won't be answering any questions for a while. First you get there, and then they go, and then the proctor goes, "Welcome to the test, the March 2019 test. Please open your books." Guess what? It takes forever just to fill in. Do it. Please do not stop. Please don't go on. You know what I mean? You have to do all that. They have to write their names, you know, and make sure it's them and not somebody else. Now, you know, so that takes a while. Then there's pauses. I'm just telling you, it takes a while. So you know what? Have them bring food. Maria, have them bring a drink, have them bring Gatorade, they can take breaks between the sections, go to the bathroom, have a little bite to eat. You don't want to be hungry on this test. You know what I mean? By the way, also don't have your kids don't have them cram the night before. I don't think you would, but if it worry works, it's not going to help. The night before is too late. You know what I mean? Just chill out, watch a movie and go to bed. You'd rather be well rested. You know, generally speaking, you want to get to the test center early, or especially if it's a place you've never been before. You know where your seat is. You don't want to rush. Bring a lot of pencils. Number 2 pencils are sharpened. Don't bring mechanical pencils. They don't allow it. Bring a big old eraser, so if you have to erase, you don't have a smearing. Bring a calculator that works. Bring a watch. That's it. It's low tech. Now, some parents wonder, hey, I've heard that they're going to move to online testing. I don't think so anytime soon. And this is why. It's not fair at home. The SAT set up for like 2 weeks or something last year, and they backed off quickly because it wouldn't be fair for your child who has great access and great speed than for another kid who doesn't, or a kid who has a house full of people where he doesn't have quiet. So forget that. Plus the cheating angle. There's another whole part of it. So forget that's not going to happen. Can they do it at schools? I've talked to counselors. They do not have the resources to get out 100 machines, make sure they're all working fine. Can you picture it? Do you know what I mean? They're not there yet. Okay, so the paper and test, that's what it's going to be. Now, if you wonder, is your school going to test next year? I don't know for sure. I'm going to guess at this point that the schools that have it scheduled have experience and know what they can do now. The problem last year, I mean, it's hurt everybody, was like, wait, who's going to come in from outside school and bring the virus with them, right? Because everybody wanted to come in. And then the more schools that dropped, the more kids that wanted to come in. So you had kids wanting to go 4 hours away and come into your school, and that scared the heck out of everybody. So the more that dropped, the more kids wanted to go. And finally, you know, they can't deal with it. If the kids get each other sick, if the teacher gets sick and the teacher brings it back, you know, so what happened was some schools still managed. But what some schools did is they got an offer from the SAT. All schools got this offer, actually, to do the test privately. And parents, this might be information you don't know. I don't know. They are allowed to do it themselves for their students only on certain dates, Saturdays usually. Some schools took them up on it, most did not. I sympathize with those schools that didn't. They felt they didn't have the resources, but it's a pretty good option. I mean, when most schools that did it, they did it for seniors only. They wanted to be spaced out, and they felt the seniors had it. They were at the end of their rope, so they let the seniors come in and test. And they're doing it again this spring. So you can ask about it, and the counselor should be able to give you an answer, yes or no. Now, I don't want to get myself in too much trouble, but parents have a lot of impact. So if a lot of parents say, "Hey, can we please have the test?" It might change things. It might persuade the district to give maybe the counselors more staffing or something. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a counselor. I don't know what all the troubles they have to go through with this stuff. But I do know schools have the option to do it. The counselors are usually the ones who will be consulted about it. Obviously, the district has to sign off on it. But that's one of the reasons private schools are a little bit better about it. Like Central here, Central Catholic, and Moravian were able to do it. But yeah, I don't think Moravian's doing it in the spring. My kid goes to middle school, Moravian. She's not going to do it. But if they have to in the fall, they say they will for their seniors. So we'll see. And as you know, just like me, every week the news is different. We're all hoping we're going to get shots. Maybe not. I don't know. So I can't say for sure. I do know when you have test centers, though, they are distanced. If you're worried about it, the kids are far apart. And what I'm hoping is that if the teachers get the shots, then maybe they'll feel better about that part. But again, like I say, I'm hoping you can call the counselors there and find out what they're thinking about the test. And they probably will tell you, what they're thinking. Like, we thought it'd be okay, but that was based on vaccines, but now we're not sure. We're fine with it. We're okay. We know how to deal with it. They'll probably tell you the truth. I don't see why they wouldn't, And if it's your own school, they might tell you about what they decided about the private tests. Okay. See, register. Oh yeah. How many times should your child take the SAT? That's a big question. Parents always ask that. Parents there's kind of like an urban legend that like, if my kid takes a test multiple times, the colleges will not like my kid. Nope. Those people that are like hyper on this process, have been doing this for years. Some of them, like, they've been looking at this since their kids were in 7th grade, and taking the test 3 times is pretty much minimum for a lot of them. I say 3 is about right. Why? Well, there's a couple reasons. The main one is that tests don't take low scores. Schools, they take either the highest single sitting when you went one day, or they combine them and super score them, like your math or your reading. That's good. You want more opportunities at that, right? You want to be able to take more shots. Let's say also, you know what? There's variation between the tests. There shouldn't be, but there are. Some tests are easier than others. And when I say easier, that doesn't mean the score's higher. A lot of kids will say, "Hey, that test was so easy," and then they find their score is low. Well, it was easy for everybody, at the April test. So it happens all the time. Like, "Oh, I thought I killed that, and I got like this," and then the other time I didn't think I did well, and I did 50 points better. It happens, especially at a high level. There's variation. When you get a high level, the scores, one test, the answer can matter a lot. So it could be a really big variation. So what you want to do is it's just like a game. You want to take cracks at it, not every month, for crying out loud. Don't drive your kid crazy. That's not a good idea. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that like every 4 or 5 months. You know what I mean? Also, a lot of parents don't know this, but you can continue to take it as a senior for a while. There are tests in July. Well, not July, but it depends on which test it is. August, September, October, November. The SAT threw in extra ones last year. And you know what? For early decision, usually the October test is the last one, but the test result can get to the college after the application goes in. But that's also true for regular decision. If you're buying regular decision up in like December, those tests can go in late too. November, December, they might even take a January test if you ask the school. You know what I mean? So don't give up. I would say students generally hate the idea of taking SATs past a certain point. It's kind of like what the prom. They feel it's one of the things they're entitled to. I know I feel bad for the kids in prom. They'll go like, "I want to have fun my senior year. I do not want to worry about the SAT." Well, geez, you guys. I mean, it's a thing. Is it really one Saturday in October, November going to kill you? I mean, but they can do what they want. But I'm just saying they can do it. And of course, if they're fighting you all the way, they might not do so well at it. But if you're a team on this kind of thing, and and like it's either going to help you get in or it's going to help you get merit aid, that's a good thing. And so that would go to why you would take the SAT multiple times. If you want to take it like 5 or 6 times, I could see where a school might think that's too much because they just worry about the kid being kind of nervous. That's what one guy told me, but I don't know. I still couldn't tell you for sure. My guess is that most schools, they have a system. They tell people, "Hey, Give us the highest single sitting or give us the highest super score, and that's what we take. Okay, they don't have time to be pulling it apart. They might be concerned if the increase was incredible, but the SAT people get concerned about that too. That's when they check on cheating and stuff like that. How much? Let's see. Oh yeah. Subject. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
If your child takes the SATs more than once, you were kind of getting into this, but if you send scores to the school, do they get all of the scores? Can you request
They get the ones
just
that
highest?
they get the ones that you want to send them.
Okay,
Here's the thing, Beth. You can keep them and not send them,
right,
but it'll cost you a little bit extra money to send them in later.
right.
Because they give you X a number at the beginning, what, 3 or
I
4?
remember that.
I wouldn't really worry about it too much. On the other hand, if you feel like, hey, this is my kid's first 10 and your kid's a little nervous, then by all means, hold off. If it makes them feel better and not be pressured. I mean, generally speaking, that's another reason to take a test multiple times, is that so you don't feel like this is it. Oh my God, and that's what makes kids freak out. It's a little bit, not all kids, no, some kids never freak out. I mean, but it just, it's like, hey, it's one test, okay? We're going to be aggressive. We're going to do the best we can to play our game. And then we're going to forget about it for a while. And then we'll come back in 3 or 4 months. You know what I mean? It's just something they should do, and just part of life. And I like to look at it as an opportunity. Do you have a question, Karen? Is that your hand, or just a hand up there? No. Okay.
I do. Yes, it is.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, okay. Okay. My daughter's in 10th grade.
Mm-hmm.
She's in 10th grade, and she took the PSAT this past fall, and I just wanted her to get used to the test and test taking.
Yep.
What is the suggested schedule that she should follow from now?
Well, I mean, it depends on the kid. Again,
Should she? When are the next available tests?
the SAT tests are all during the year. Now normally you would know exactly when they were because they're scheduled, but we don't know which ones are going to get canceled. But on the other hand, for you to sign up for a test isn't really a big deal, because if it gets canceled, it's less important than it is to a junior. But go on the College Board site; they have them. The next one's in March. Then there's also the ACT, which I'll talk about. So there are tons of opportunities. However, I would register, like I say, soon for all you guys. People have been, pretty big on this. Even though it's test optional, people have been pretty, the kids are ambitious, are still very ambitious. And that's one of the reasons, again, like I say, to take the test, is that, kids aren't turning in scores as much, but those scores that are good, that's an opportunity. If there are fewer of them, they look even better. And like I say, if schools are trying to compare tens of thousands of kids, I don't know why they wouldn't use that one objective measuring stick. They don't require it, but they're going to see it and they're going to use it. And not just for, admittance, but for merit aid as well. I mean, they've always been using, not every school, but a lot of schools have been using SAT and ACT scores for merit aid and assigning, merit aided kids. Merit aid is what you get for being a brainiac or being a really great student and not poor. And there's always aid for financial reasons. That's great, but you can get aid no matter what your income level is if you're really bright, and you can get schools to offer you more to go there. That's what they want. Questions? I feel like I saw somebody with a question. Yep.
I have a question. So
Sure.
my daughter's also in 10th grade. She missed the PSATs this year.
Uh-huh.
So how does that work then? She has to take the PSAT first?
No, she doesn't have to take the PSAT. No, for 10th, the PSAT is not required for taking the SAT at all.
Okay.
It's almost
Okay.
safe. Hopefully she can, and I don't think she would be able, as a sophomore, I don't think they also would let her even try to do the SAT substitute for it because of what happened.
Okay.
Because she's a sophomore. As a junior, I don't think so. As a junior, you say, hey, she wanted to take the PSAT. Can you please take the SAT score as a substitute? Of course, by next year, they'll probably be gone. So as a sophomore, I wouldn't worry about it. The PSAT.
So she can just start right with the SAT
Yep.
in her junior year.
You are not required to take the PSAT. That you're not ever required to take it. A lot of times
Okay.
people think they are, but they're not. You can do whatever you want.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Let's see. Other questions? Okay. So what else? Okay. Now, recently, this is what happened. The subject tests that a lot of the more elite school, fancier schools required, more than most schools, have been canceled. They are now done forever. A lot of those schools would ask for like 3 subject tests. Could be math, history, English, whatever. STEM kids were especially big on them. They're no longer required. What does that mean? Not that much for you, probably. It's one less thing to worry about, which is nice. Also, it's a thing that, let's say, because you had to allocate a test date to it. Let's say that May test, you were saying this was going to be my SAT subject test date. Well, now you could take the SAT that day instead. You wouldn't have to worry about it. Also, I think that probably one thing will cause even more kids to apply to elite schools because it's one less barrier. You know what I mean? It's one less thing to worry about. And more kids will convince themselves if they don't have great SAT subject scores, that's one less thing that'll knock them out. So there'll probably be more people applying than ever before. What that means is AP tests will be even more important. In fact, a lot of kids always wonder, like, why am I taking an AP test and then the subject test in the same thing? You know? So the AP tests will still be there and they'll still be really important, but they won't have subject tests anymore. They're done. The SAT essay will be discontinued as of June. It's never been popular with colleges. They introduced it in 2004. I like the idea of it. I enjoyed teaching it, but they didn't do a good job grading it, in my opinion. And colleges, a lot of them didn't even look at it. And high schools didn't care about it. Then they made it optional when because the ACT was optional. The ACT and the SAT tend to go back and forth. And since they made it optional, so the SATs had it optional for a few years now, and they realized it's not being graded well. Colleges don't care. Colleges have enough in their hands now, more kids and more essays, personal essays. So they're going to flame it out in June. My kids, I've taught it less and less, a lot less lately, because not all kids take it and they don't really have to. I'm not teaching it at all now. And especially with the June thing, I don't, it's not necessary. So if your kids sign up for the essay, they want to take it, fine, but I wouldn't worry about it. They might even just drop it and just eat the $10 or whatever it is. It doesn't matter, which is too bad because writing is an important skill. But like I said, they weren't measuring it that well, in my opinion. My wife taught it for them for a few months, so I saw what their system was, and I'm like, oh man, it was almost like random. It was a cool essay. I liked it, but it was, okay. So that happened. Oh, so and also the SAT people were saying it'll open more seats. Maybe, we'll see. Okay, is it reasonable to expect my child score to improve? Like I say, without preparing, I'd say 30 points or so a year. And that will diminishing returns over time because they're not going to learn any more new stuff as a senior that'll be helpful in the test unless they're really working at their English and stuff. Then maybe some math things. If they work at it, that's a different. If they work at it, there's a lot they can do. 100 points is not unusual. Or even it's pretty much, I would say, if you work at it from a place where you didn't work, 100 points you should be able to get it. 200 is harder, but it's definitely doable. When you get past that, it gets dicier and dicier. Sometimes parents call me, they go, my daughter, or I have a student coming, I'm at a 1100. I need to get to 1500 to get into Harvard. So it's not going to happen. You're not going to go 400 points. It can happen, but it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? It's possible. I've had it happen, but it's really rare. I mean, you're starting from the point where maybe some kid totally blew the early test, for some reason was sick or didn't fill in all the bubbles, and then really worked hard, and then bam. But that much is not really realistic. So parents, kids, be realistic. Shoot for the 200. That's a really good goal. With preparation, it can be done. Maybe higher, and that can change your application. But it doesn't. If you're trying to go 400, then you got to fill in every bubble, and that, as I said, that's self-defeating. You know what I mean? Give your kids realistic goals. Who knows? Maybe they'll come president of the United States. Anyway. You know what I mean? I mean anything, but there's no point in having so much pressure on them. Like I think what the problem is sometimes it's like not so much Harvard is like I need to get into this program. I want to get into this PA program. This PA program says the minimum level is 1400. And first of all, it's not always 1400. And second, that number they gave you doesn't mean that you get it, you get in. That's one thing I'm always surprised about. You guys, then you're one of many. I mean, it's like, think of different ones. But kids tend to get obsessed with colleges. And your kids do that? I'm obsessed with fill in the blank. How about you, Ryan? You obsessed? No, good, thanks. Yeah. I mean, it's okay to want things, Sometimes you'll get them, sometimes you won't. I mean, but give yourself a spread, But you never know. I mean, it's not like you don't apply to reach schools. It can happen. You don't know who's going to get in. You don't know. I'm trying to think. I mean, I know I had a friend down here. He went to Becca. He's my age, and he wanted to be an actor and went to Hollywood. I'm like, he's not very good. That guy's had a career for 40 years. You know, if you're persistent, you never know. You never know. Okay. Anyway, before I go to the ACT, does anybody have any questions?
Yes, I have
Yes.
another question.
Sure.
I know that the SAT, the max score, for the PSAT rather, the max score is 1520, so you're starting lower at your max score anyway. But is there any correlation that you know of that if they got like X on the PSAT, that they tend to get that on the SAT, like it goes up a certain level, or?
No, it's about the same.
Okay,
I mean, I can't say for every kid, but generally speaking, if that's the PSAT score you get back, that's mostly what you're looking at. Mostly.
okay, just curious.
You never know, but yeah, but it's roughly the same.
Okay.
Any other questions before I go to the ACT and tell you about something you probably don't know because ACT is not big out there in the East? Okay, the ACT. The ACT has been around for a long, long time. Yes, colleges take it. Any college takes the SAT will take the ACT. Okay, they know all about it. Even if you're hearing about it now, they're fine with it. It's been more popular in the Midwest for a long, long time. The SAT is more popular in the West and the East Coast. The ACT, a lot of my students, I say a lot, but a fair number of my students prefer it. They come into the class here knowing it, or then they take it in the class and like, you know, I like this. And you know what? That alone makes it worth their test. If they like it, that's good. Is it that different? Not that different. It's somewhat different. I'll explain how. The first section is grammar, and it looks very much like the SAT grammar section. It's almost the same. Then the section is math, and that does look different. Okay, so on the SAT, besides those fill and grid in things you have, besides those, they also have a non-calculator section, and kids do not like that. They don't like being without the calculators, right? But they have it. Personally, I think that's a good thing, but that's my opinion. The ACT, calculator all the way, no grid ins. It's 60 minutes long, and there's 60 questions. It's just a whole boatload of questions. They go easy to hard, and they vary quite a bit. They tend not to be quite as maybe, I'm trying to think, not tricky, but so a lot of kids like that right away because you can start knocking down questions quick. On the other hand, you have to practice it. Otherwise, you'll like be thinking, this is great. And all of a sudden, what? I've got how many more questions? You know, and then you've got to be really willing to give up on, you know, at least 10 of them probably. When I say that, it depends how good you are at math. But to me, you know, the ACT, you go through it just like the SAT, but even more so. Hey, I can do the problem now. Let's do it. I maybe could do that in a few minutes, question mark it. I'll move on. And then as I keep going on, then as problems are getting more and more difficult, I'll remember, you know what? I need to go back and address some of those question mark ones rather than slave for 3 minutes over a really hard question that I may not know how to do. My general feeling about math is that if you're not sure if you know how to do it, you don't know how to do it. You might get it right by luck, but that's not good. You want to know how to do it, you know, or you want to look at it and go, you know, I bet if I work on this a minute, I'll get it. That's okay. But if you're like totally puzzled, random is better than a guess. If you try to guess, you'll get it wrong every time. Just do it random at the end. You know what I mean? Like you said, boy, I have no idea how to do this, but I bet you maybe X and Y. No, don't bother. You know what I mean? Do what you can that as well as you can. When you got extra time, go back, check your math, you know, and make sure that you haven't misread things. Make sure your calculations are okay. Always work until the end. Always. So that's ACT math. ACT reading is the big bugaboo for my kids, and that's what separates the kids who want to take the ACT with those who don't usually. The SAT critical reading sections, if you did them all, they would average 13 minutes each. ACT, they'd average like 8.5 minutes. That is a gigantic difference. Huge, I should say, with my H. Now, the ACT essay is more straightforward. I mean, the ACT reading passage is more straightforward. That's good. It's easier, in my opinion, but it's not 5 minutes easier or 4.5. Now, for my kids that read quickly and process quickly, this is a great test for them. They're like, hey, I got no problem with the speed, and it's easier. Are you kidding me? And so right away, I'll find sometimes when I give the ACT, some kids will go, I want to do that test. And I'm like, sounds great, you know? So that's the difference. Otherwise, it's kind of the same. The science section is the last section. The science section is not really science you need to know, but it's based on science, like the rainfall in the Yucca Flats, or the reflection of light off the moon of Europa, or the hibernation periods of, you know, Kodiak bears. But it's not really real. It's just a bunch of charts and graphs that are designed to look real, but that you can find data and pull it apart. So they're measuring that ability. It's not so much, it is partly reading for sure, but it's like looking at stuff and figuring out where it goes. It's kind of fun, but you got to get the hang of it because there's like 6 questions and six sections in 35 minutes. You have to go kind of quickly. It took me a little bit of time to get used to, but once I like it pretty well now. Some kids love that section. They're like, oh, I love that. The thing is though, if sometimes that kid that is like that doesn't like the reading section, but if the reading section of ACT is killing them because of the time, then the amount they're going to make up on the science is not going to be enough to help. But some kids love the ACT science section. Sometimes they like the grammar section better, even though it's not that different. I'm just telling you, it's weird. Now, how do they score the ACT? They score the ACT from 1 to 36, okay? So, and actually average score is like 20, it's 20-ish, okay? It's not in the middle. Between like anything between 28 and 36 is really good. They differentiate a lot between those little small levels. And what they do is they take the 4 scores and they average them together, and that's your score. You get 21, 24, 23, 22, you get a 22 and a half or 23. And then what you would do is if you wanted to find out what that meant as an SAT score is you go to one of these online correspondence tables and you put in the ACT score to see what it comes out to. Usually for most kids, it's pretty similar. You'd be surprised, even though it feels different, they come out with almost the same number. Sometimes they might like one test better, but their score doesn't reflect it. But there are definitely some kids that have one test where they're going to have, not a gigantic difference, but a significant difference. And if that's the case, that's the test they should go with. My only problem with ACT, my only caveat is they've not done a very good job administering it last year, not well at all. Generally speaking, their customer service is not that great. So that's a problem. I have 4 kids taking it on Friday, and I'm gonna have a brush for them on Saturday, and I'm gonna brush up for them. And they like it. Those kids all like glommed on it really quickly. So I hope the test center stays open and they go for it. But yeah, I mean, you should look at it. All you guys who are testing on your kids, just take a look at the sections here and there. You can download them easily. There's a million tests online. You can get a book and just see if you prefer it. If you do, good. If it makes you want to work harder, that's good. So it's not really easier than SAT. It's just different. For some kids, it is easier. For me, it is. But not for everybody. Some kids definitely don't like it. They like the SAT. The ACT essay I'm not going to talk about because it's really not important. Just like the SAT essay, they're going to the way of the dinosaur. So, and we talk about strategies for the test, planning your time, being familiar with it, being familiar with everything, the way to bubble, making sure you bubble everything. Before I go on to really just kind of cleaning up, what other questions do you all have? Surely somebody must have a question. Yes, Ryan.
Yeah, I have a question. So for between the SAT and ACT, which do colleges prefer?
They don't. As far as I can tell, dude, that's what they tell us. I mean, it's possible, I guess. But then remember, an admissions thing, you have a bunch of people there. They'd have to all feel the same way or have a policy about it. And maybe my colleagues will tell me differently. I'll go back and ask them. But I've never heard that. It scores a score. I think. I mean, you could ask, but I've not been able to find. I'm sure if you ask particular counselors, they might go, I kind of like the ACT better. But that would be 1 out of like 10 or 12 people on the admissions thing. So do the one that is better for you.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other
How
questions? Yes.
How many times can you take the ACT? The same as the SAT?
Well, you can take it as many times as you want, but
Okay.
it's the same thing. Not all schools super score, but there are more and more are super
Okay.
scoring the ACT, which is even better because there's 4 sections.
Okay.
Oh, here's what some people ask me sometimes. Hey, what if I go in and I just worry about the English section? Okay, I'm just worried about that. Can I just concentrate in English? You can, but when people do it, it doesn't seem to work out. Like they don't do any better in the English just because they forget about the math. And what's the point of just sitting there with the math twiddling your thumb? I don't quite get it. I mean, if you want to go in with one test, say I want to work on the English harder, I understand. But but like they actually tell me, what if I just went in and didn't do anything? Well, okay, great. But it's not going to make the English better. Oh, and by the way, there's another thing. Sometimes when people come to me or they'll say like, boy, I'm real happy with my reading score, but my math score is not high enough. You know what? Oftentimes the score that's easier to improve is the one that are already good at because they like working on it. You know what I mean? Maybe they'll do better in the reading because they'll keep moving up quicker and the math is more of a slog. But that's how people tend to think of it. I'm trying to get this score up to that score, But overall, they come out to the same, it comes out to one lump score. What other questions can I answer for you?
I'm just wondering if like my child should take both to see how.
Well, you don't have to. You can take them fake. You can take them online or at home. You don't have to do them all at once either. You can do them in little sections. You know what I mean? So that, I mean, when we're in my class, I give them a test for both. So they already come out of the class knowing that. But for your own sake, there's nothing to prevent you from doing that, except I would say this, parents aren't that great at administering tests at home. I've just found they just don't. I mean, they'll say, I'll sit here and watch for an hour for something. It doesn't work. I don't know what it is. I mean, because I've had parents, I long ago gave up letting kids take tests at home, because no matter how many times people swore up and down to me that they would spend the 4 hours or 3.5, it never happened. Well, when things got out of hand, but as far maybe taking like the 45-minute section, that might work, and you could just sit there and time her, and she could take it and see. But even, just looking at the format might make a difference. Even if they looked at 1-2 pages and they go, oh, I like this better. Now, it doesn't mean they're right, because they might not like the whole section, but at least it would be an opening. Let's say they like the first 2 pages of the science section, then have them take 35 minutes to do a whole science section and see what they think. Other questions? Yes.
Sorry.
I have a question.
okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, there's 2 of
Hi,
you.
Karen. Go ahead.
There you go.
Oh, I was just saying, so my one daughter in 10th grade, she has ADHD and anxiety, and she has an IEP.
Mhm.
Like, what do I like?
Go to the counselor. You can get extra time for that sometimes, and you want it. I understand. I've seen that many times. If it's diagnosed, you can get time, but you have to work ahead. You have to go to the counselor, and then they talk to SAT people, and then the kid gets special accommodations, and it's significantly extra time.
But are the college coaches? I mean, college coaches. Sorry, are the colleges gonna know?
No, I
that
don't
she
believe
got-
so.
And
I think that would defeat the whole purpose.
okay, I was gonna say, like, because like, I'm afraid I don't want them to know,
No.
like, that she has an IEP. And
Last time I looked into this, I mean, last time I read it, I was like, clearly no, but I can look again just to make sure. But no, that would wreck the whole purpose. Nobody would do it then.
Okay,
Okay. I mean, you got to accommodate what's good for your child.
right.
You know what I mean? It's just the way it is, and testing is an artificial situation. Even though I think it does reflect certain real attributes, it is kind of artificial. You know what I mean? One in the lives we're going to have to, do. I don't know why the ACT gives so little time for the reading. I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, what's the point? They do it, but yeah, I mean, your daughter's not going to have like 8 minutes to read something in college. I mean, college is hard, but it's different. Karen, how about you?
I was going to ask if is there a difference, or would you recommend that the child take a class, right? Or, some of the instruction that you can pay for, or is taking the test multiple times more effective? Like, does it even out? Like, what was your opinion on that?
I mean, Karen, let's admit that I'm biased, because this is my business. No, really. I mean, there's no point in being upfront about it. I mean, I mean, to me, it's not either or. It's both. I mean, I wouldn't
Okay.
hurt my kids and have them taken only once. I want them to take it multiple times.
Mhm.
When my kids, at least for me, and what I'll do is in a few minutes when I'm finished just doing the presentation, if people want to stick, Tammy can't hear anymore. Oh wow. Tammy, can you hear now? The rest of you can hear, right?
Mhm.
There's probably nothing I can do about that. What was I saying? See, I knew I'd forget at some point. I was going good, and then I saw the thing.
If we stay after the
Yeah,
end of the
sure, sorry.
presentation.
Yeah.
I'll explain about my classes a little bit more. You don't have to stay for it. You can just skedaddle if you want. But generally speaking, my mantra with kids is the earlier the better they prepare, schedule permitting. You know what I mean? You don't want to do what they're doing there. If you do prep with anything else, not what they're doing 5 million other things. They'll never put it first, and why should they? But they should put it like third, maybe, instead of like 8th. And they'll be in their phone and stuff, So it's, I'd love to say it's something that people can work out a little bit a day at a time, because that would be great. But I don't think they do, but some kids do. Now some of the very best kids, very best meaning not people, but best test takers, best high scores, do this all on their own. They're highly motivated. They get on Khan Academy. They figure it all out, and you know what? That's awesome. You know what I mean? Some other kids are not the high scores, but they're still very motivated too, and they can do that. But you want to know what's on it. I mean, you want to know what's on it to practice it. You don't just taking the test itself won't improve your score. You have to do something in between it, whether it's with me or yourself. It'd be kind of crazy to expect otherwise. It's just like athletics. You got to practice it, But so no, Karen, I think you should prepare it some way, whether you do it with me or Khan Academy is free and it's good, you know.
Mhm.
But yeah, multiple times is good just because that's the way the thing works, but just taking it multiple times won't do anything.
Right, right.
Anybody else? I think the planning ahead I talked about already, and strategies I talked about, right? Does anybody have any other questions? Do you have any? Don't always fill in C, but it's not the middle one anymore anyway, but I used to hear that. Always put it C.
Fill in
No,
C.
that doesn't work. You know, like we talked about special needs. We talked about the test today, bringing food and stuff and getting there earlier. I think I took your questions. Before I move on to my own thing, which would be very short, does anybody have any more questions about things in general? Okay, if you leave, I will not take it personally. Okay, so this is the way my thing works. I do it twice a week for 6 weeks before every test. I don't, personally, I don't think cramming for this test helps, but parents like it that way, kids like it that way, and it's convenient. So that's what I do. Like for the March 13th test, I just started this week, and we'll go twice a week up until March. But my feeling is like I say, it's not a crammy test. It's not a data test. It's a rethinking test. So you're trying to get better at the way you're approaching the test, not cramming in information. That's why like the day before what I do is the day before the test is I have brush ups, like the Friday night before the test. I have brush ups for all my students, not just the ones in the class, but the ones from the past, from the last year. And they're all invited to come in and we work over problems. We goof off. I show them some cartoons or something, maybe. We go over sample problems and I say, go to bed or watch a movie or something. Don't go to a party. I'm not saying that, but you know.
Are you doing it by Zoom? Are you doing it by Zoom?
Everything's by
Or
Zoom
are
right
you
now.
doing it in person classes?
Just like with you, yeah. What I found was last year when people were still hoping to get back to normal, I taught one small class in person at Kenneth Israel here instead of Muhlenberg, what I normally do, and I had 5 kids with masks, and I didn't like the masks. I mean, let me make sure I like the masks, and then we should wear them. What I'm saying is I can't read the kids. I can read your face, Karen, a lot better, and Ryan's face a lot better than I can read Stacy. Well, Stacy's not, but you know what I mean? I can read that a lot better than the mask. So actually I find online without mask is better than in person with. When we get back to in person without mask, oh God, yeah, please. I can't wait. But for now, then I taught one at a private home. And since then, almost nobody's asked about it because we're kind of settled in, you know, for better, for worse. And everybody expects online. So the kids know it. You know, like before, I think the kids are more upset about doing another online thing back last May than they are now. You know what I mean? It's like they've accepted it as part of their life, kind of. And so I find it's not so bad. A couple things that have helped out with the online that I'll keep when I go back to the in-person are that I ask for the homework via text or email within 24 hours of the class. And then I can send back my notes to them individually. Then I ask for corrections and I want them to send that back to me. And that is really cool because what I normally do is I used to check at the beginning of class, all my kids, and I can't check that as easily that way. This is much better. We spend less time on that. And then I know what problems everybody's tending to miss. And that's what we go over the homework, and some things they are getting, I don't have to worry about. So that'll keep going. As far as I can see, I will be online until May. I was hoping so much to do the summer. Summer's usually my busy time. And last summer I got creamed, as you can imagine. But I was hoping, but you know, I'll live, whatever happens. Yeah, so I do it twice a week for 6 weeks. We do Sunday mornings, always. Usually Wednesday nights, sometimes Tuesday nights if they overlap the 2 sessions. It's 3 hours each. Sometimes people think that's really crazily long, but my kids don't seem to mind it too much. 3 of the Sundays we do long tests. We take a PSAT, an SAT, and an ACT, and they go to about 3:30. They have lunch in between. I used to bring Domino's, but you can have Domino's if it's at your house. That's your business. But so we do that. I give the kids I grade the kids' tests, and I give them back detailed notes about what I think they did well and what they didn't do so well. So between that and the homework, I'm checking in with them, you know, pretty regularly. I hope they ask me questions. They can ask me questions whenever they want, online or text. And I like homework questions. They're better than turning in crappy homework. That I don't like. That's like, you know, and if I get a lot of crappy homework or kids aren't studying for vocab and math quizzes, I do give those. Then I will talk to the parents about it and say, hey, you know, this is what I'm seeing. Because I feel like the point is not, are they getting questions right, but are they doing it right? Is there an effort there? If there's an effort there, we'll be fine. You know, because we're not trying to be all perfect. We're just trying to get better. And that's one good thing about this test is that everybody can get better from where they're at, but they got to think about where they're at and getting to a certain point, not where this kid's at. That's no help. You know what I mean? So I know where they're at, but they generally don't know. But on the other hand, kids do not like to ask questions a lot because they're afraid sometimes that they'll look stupid. I try to convince them that, other kids don't think they're stupid because of that they generally tend to admire people that are brave. And certainly when one could ask a question, it helps. And I always tell them, if you're asking a question for yourself, you're asking for somebody else. I guarantee you it doesn't understand either. But you know what, parents, reading their faces is a gigantic help. Sometimes I don't need them to ask because I can see it. For instance, let's see, Ryan, you ready for this? This is the sound of math not learning. I go, okay, you guys got it? And they go, kind of semi-smile. No, that means they don't have it. Here's what it means they have it. They go, oh, I call it the sound of math. It comes out of their gut, like, oh, and then they got it. Not like, yeah, But then I'll do a little chat window and say, well, ask me this separately if you don't want it. Like I'll say, everybody got it, and if the kid's face doesn't look like they have it, then write me separately. You know what I mean? So that's why I do the test. Kids can come back to the class for real if they wait like 5 months between. I don't need them coming back the next session. It doesn't work, and probably it's because their parents made them. They're always welcome to come back to as many of the brush ups as they want, and they do. I like them to check in with me a lot. They don't always check in with me, but I love it. I like seeing where my kids are going to school. I can answer some questions about college, but I'm not a college entrance person. That's not what I do. I can look at kids' scores sometimes and tell them what I think they're doing better, but without a full score report from an SAT, there's only so much I can tell them. If you get a full score report, I can kind of tell where you answered, where you didn't. That's helpful to me. But if I just know your general score, it's hard for me to tell, like, did you answer? That's one of the good things about the PSAT and the booklet is because you can see what they did. It's really nice. But in the SAT, you will not get that booklet back. You know what I mean? You won't be able to tell what they did. But what's another hint? Pencils, everything. All you guys use your pencil, always, always, always. Don't worry about the booklet. You're allowed to write in the booklet. It's, no one's going to take it away from you. There's no penalty. Cover the booklet with your scrawl. What else? Any other questions about my class? I hold them year round. In the summer, I hold them for 3 weeks every weekday. It's totally different. I go like Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday class, and then Friday test, and we do it for 3 weeks. I like the summer better. The kids do their work better during the summer, actually, because they don't have anything else usually. They wouldn't sign up if they were heavily involved in something. Some kids much prefer it, some don't. But I would say nowadays, most people come to class are a good percentage of referrals, so they know what they're getting into. So I think the days when beginning of my class, when girls are there are 2 girls I remember from are like, why are we here? Basically, oh my God, we could be at the beach. That doesn't happen much anymore. They've already had the discussion with their parents whether they come to my class or not. So usually people that are in the summer, they want to be there. They feel it's the easiest time to do it. I like it. I mean, that being said, some kids summer's not good for them. They have vacation or whatever. I'm gonna have a vacation in the summer, I hope. What else? What else can I tell you? That's it. That's it. Ryan, can I go have a drink now? Is that the idea? Can I go have a drink with my wife now, or is that all right? Can I watch a show? What show should we watch tonight, Alex? He doesn't know. Reno 911. I don't know. That's an old show I really like. Anybody else? Okay, folks, you can always talk to me through email or phone or chat or all that stuff. I'd say you see me around, but you probably won't. Unless you're down at the parkway taking a walk when the snow melts. I like walking by the parkway down in Madison, the fish hatchery. Okay, folks, have a good night.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for everything.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks.
Have a good evening.
You too.